Okay, so I asked Basil like a year ago to do the commentary. He forgot to tell me he couldn't talk. Why are you even mic'd up, mate? You can't speak. So anyway, yeah, I'm back, I guess, and barely in frame. Hi. Also, Ziggy's here. Hey, mate. You know Basil. So anyway, I'm back. Who, me? Jord. This is my Realm Forge. Okay. Idol of Gork. Okay, this is the third battle, the battle for Troll Rocks. Or of Troll Rocks. Yeah. The Battle of Troll Rocks. So basically, Grotfang, you know, Orc war boss who's trying to retake Rutgardburg, he has some allies in the Itchy Scabs. And he said to them, hey, we're going to have some fun, you know, take down Rutgardburg, take over our old haunts, it's going to be great. So yeah, Itchy Scabs, they were keen to do that, and they were told, meet at Troll Rocks. Turns out there are two lots of Troll Rocks in the area, and so the Itchy Scabs got caught out. Waiting at the wrong rocks, and they set up camp. So they got some orc huts. We're building the orc huts, and that's what we're doing today. We're building huts, which I think should be fun. They're good. I'm really proud of them. So yeah, this is how I built them. Yeah. So once again, we're going to be using the original paper designs as a guide for all of our steps moving forward. So first off, I'm going to use them to measure out the scale of our bases. I use a hot wire tool for foam board because it's a lot better than blunting your blade. You can use a craft knife, but that blade is going to blunt as a result of it. I use a compass to mark out the circle where the walls are going to end up, though it turns out it's actually the same circumference as a Pringles tin.
Oh, it's funny. Potato chips in there? You're kidding. No.
I then use a dirty little goblin to mark out the entryways. I don't necessarily need to be able to pass a model, you know, directly through the entrance, but I do want it to be a realistic proportion at least. Now to build up the walls, we're going to be replicating a process called wattle and daub that has been used for a very long time in building, which is basically putting stakes in the ground, which is why we are using the polystyrene bases, so we can drive cocktail sticks into them. That'll help give the whole thing some structure, and then you weave material throughout, and then you cover it in mud or clay. So pretty great. It's been done since, I think, the Neolithic times. So, you know, real old school. And we're making it pretty authentically. We could have just made a ring of card and put a hat on it and called it a day. But no, I'm making all of this authentically, and I think it will actually provide really nice results. And the same process can actually be used to make fences that look really nice. Just the wattle bit. You don't need to even do the daub for a decent looking fence, but, you know, sort of bordering farmland or anything like that. Also, all the Napoleonics fans out there, these also look just like gabions, don't they? You can use the same techniques for those. If you don't know what a gabion is, they look like that. So this is actually a technique that takes bloody hours. It's a very long thing to be doing, so stick on a podcast. Okay, that's my recommendation. So I'm also saving myself some stress by gluing some of these bits in place before we go on further. So I used a dab of super glue for the top bits of the string to keep that in place. I actually super glued a little loop for that first rung when I started this process, you know, then weaved it all through, and then I super glued the top. But super glue melts polystyrene, so for the bottom layer I'm using PVA glue, which is polystyrene safe. You can get polystyrene safe super glues, but I don't have any. If you don't know if your super glue is polystyrene safe, then it's probably not. So just avoid that. Use PVA, right? If you don't have PVA glue in your house, what are you even doing crafting things? It's ridiculous. Go get PVA. So I've also expanded the size of the boss hut's base, and I am carving them all into nice organic shapes, so they're not just on big old tiles. And now begins the daub. So the reason I want to do the daub process, you know, after shaping all the bases, is because I'm going to use some of this polyfiller, or, you know, you may know it as spackle or whatever. It's, you know, pre-mixed plaster, basically. You know, wall filler. It's for filling up walls. You know, gaps in your plaster at home. I'm filling gaps in my walls here too. So, you know, it's perfect. It's the perfect tool for this job. Also, you can thin it down, but I wouldn't. I would keep it nice and thick because we're going to be exploiting that a bit later. We don't want it to get into every crack perfectly because we're going to be chipping a bunch of it to create sort of weathered, damaged bits. I then add some additional plaster to the back edge of the boss hut because this is going to be a rocky area. And I achieved that rocky texture by scrumpling up some tinfoil and pressing it against the surface. Is scrumpling a word? It is now. So the beauty of having made these steps authentically is now any damage that we cause intentionally is going to look equally as authentic because all of the materials are where you'd expect them to be. So using a cocktail stick from behind so I don't leave impressions of the cocktail stick in the plaster, I can start poking chunks out of it, which is really, really good. It's going to look really natural. It's going to look like the daub has fallen away from the wattle for whatever reason. I'm also going to flex a bunch of the wall to create all of these smaller fractures in it. So there's a bunch of cracks which will look like, sort of mud drying and cracking fairly naturally. And also I'm going to create some larger cracks in the surface with a knife. So plaster, right? Plaster's an interesting one. Basically most plaster or plaster based things like, polyfiller spackle, whatever, it goes from really soggy to, oh yeah, that's dry. As you would, say it if it was on your wall. You go, oh yeah, that's dry, and then you can paint over it. That in about an hour or so, right? It doesn't take long. However, for it to actually fully cure, it can take a day. So basically, you have this great period of time where you can attack it with things, where it'll still sort of crumble and, look fairly natural like this. But after a full 24 hours, even all the damage is going to cure, and that is going to be completely solid. So you're not going to have to worry too much about actual damage to your model when you're done. So pretty useful stuff. And then I use gesso and PVA glue, and then I thin it down with some water, and then I coat everything in it. This combo makes the terrain incredibly robust, and paint sticks to it brilliantly, so it's the perfect primer for terrain in my opinion. Now you really want to pay attention to what I'm doing here, it's really important. Oh, you don't want to miss out doing that. Now, sticks are an excellent source of wood, so I'm using candy floss sticks so I can add a wooden door frame, which will help finish off that entryway, I think. At least in terms of the structure, we will need doors too, and we'll get to that. These can be cut rather rough and ready because it's still an orc building, so pliers will do the job just fine. Also, I cut away all the knobbly bobbly bits on one side of the door frame so I can actually have the stick flush with it. Also, we need a canvas for the orc art that is going to be bordering our door. So we're actually adding an additional layer. Now that we have the actual frame, we're going to add these panels in front of it using tongue depressors. So I'm going to cut them to size, and then I'm going to cut away more of the knobbly bobbly bits from the plaster if I need to, in order to get them flush with the front of them. And now it's time to do some painting. So I'm doing a sort of a pinky beige overbrush over all of it. An overbrush is kind of like a dry brush, but there's a hell of a lot more paint. Basically, I'm trying to just go sort of across the surface and not into all of the grooves. So I still have lots of cracks and things showing from doing this. I'm also going to make the inside a little bit more brown, so it looks a bit more like sticks. Now you might think this is all a bit intense and bright, but that is going to get knocked down in the next step. And once that's all dry, I then knock everything down using this homemade wash, which is a bunch of just brown inks and paint and a lot of water. It's very watered down, and a little bit of dish soap. And that breaks the surface tension, which is what makes a wash a wash. It runs into all the cracks. So there you go, easy wash. Do it how you like. I recommend using some inks in there because they have such high pigment density, so you can get a really intense colour with a very watery wash. And of course, if it's too intense, you can still just wipe a bunch of it away, can't you? Nice smooth surface. It's going to stay on all the cracks, and there you go. I'm then adding a brown texture paste to all of the bases. You can make this yourself, but this is one I bought. But just any varying amounts of grit plus brown paint, and you're there. And the reason I wanted to get the texture paste on now is because I actually want to dry brush the walls of the building, and I want to dry brush the floor as well. I want to do it all together, so that's what I'm doing. So this is a very light cream. I think this is dark sand, I think, from Vallejo. But yeah, anything like Xandri dust or something will do just great. The initial base coat on the terrain of whatever colour, the main colour of the thing is going to be, followed by a dark wash and then a light, highlight dry brush to finish it off. Those are basically the 3 steps that will get 99% of your terrain finished, So yeah, just great 3 steps, and you can see it looks really natural. So I wanted the boss hut to stand out a little bit more. So it is already a little bit bigger with the paper terrain, but with this I also made it taller. I put it on 2 layers of foam board rather than the 1, and now I'm building a patio. So you can see I'm using coffee stirrers, and in order to get a good snap on them, I'm using 2 sets of pliers. So that way they will always snap between those 2 sets of pliers, so I can control the length while also getting a snapped end on them, which is honestly a game changer. Alright, you're welcome. And the rest is just an incision made between the 2 layers of foam board, and I just stick the coffee stirrers in. So dead simple, but it should give a lot of impact and make it stand out from the other huts rather nicely. So most of the time when you're using wood to be wood, it looks like wood because it is. But I'm going to score some wood grain into this because I'm doing a very flat paint job on it, and I need to exaggerate that wood grain if I'm going to make it look like wooden panels. So I did that with the back of a craft knife, and now begins the really arduous paint job of painting all the little orc symbols onto these door frame panels. So although it's not technically primed, I have done a base coat with the various coloured squares, which is fine to then add the detail on top of. For that other detail though, it's very, very fine. So using miniature paint over a flat acrylic surface, you are in the best possible position to get that fine detail on. It is going to be rather smooth generally, but you are going to make sure your paint is thinned down enough that it is flowing well and your brush isn't dragging. And with those first 2 borders done, you can see the effect. They're so orky now. I love it. Then I just have to paint the rest and we can glue them on. And if you want to make sure they grip nice and tight, a clothes peg is a very powerful hobby tool. Hey guys, so this video is actually brought to you by Into the AM. I have partnered with them. All the t-shirts I've been wearing in this episode are part of their graphic tees ranges, and they sell other stuff too, but if you use the link in the doobly-doo and you use code SQUIG at the checkout, then you will get a 10% discount, and I'll get a bit of money out of it too, which is nice. So if you want some new summer clothes, yeah, go buy some. That'll be cool. Graphic tees and things. Yeah, go check it out. Thanks. Now we're getting to the part that you didn't know that we should have been dreading all along. It's the thatched roof. Obviously, these huts use the Pringle standard sizing. But since we're going to be making conical roofs, I have then increased it. Just eyeballed it, give it an extra ½ inch to 1 inch radius. And here I am using this compass to mark out what will be, honestly, this will be a thatched roof, I promise. So weirdly, the steps to make a thatched roof are actually very similar to the steps you need to make a pom-pom, except instead of using those steps, you do the steps you need to make a thatched roof instead. And so that involves getting this cardboard template, wrapping jute twine around it, really nice and tight. You don't want to leave any gaps. Go over the same area a little bit, if you need to. You're just trying to make sure that you have even coverage along the outside. You want to make sure that all of the outside is covered in twine, which means it's going to bunch up more in the center of the circle, which is absolutely fine. So the ball of twine is actually between my feet. I'm holding it with my feet to stop it from rolling away, which worked out great for me. But then I have monkey feet. Maybe put it in a bowl. That could work. Anyway, we're going to wait for our glue gun to heat up. So we're gluing the center circle of twine all together, that inside circle. So that we are smushing in, okay? We're doing a bit of glue, but we're mostly using the heat of the nib. I want to say nib. We're using the hot nib to smush all of the glue in to all the string, so all the fibers get caught up in it. The reason being that we are going to be cutting the outside circle. You can see how this is kind of like a pom-pom, right? You can kind of see that? Anyway, usually you use 2 bits of card, and then you tie a string in between the 2 bits of card after you've cut the outside, and then when you take the cards away, it kind of looks like that, but it's 2 different bits. Anyway, that's how you make a pom-pom. Look it up if you want to make a pom-pom. We're making a roof, okay? It's totally different. And so we're going to heat the glue gun up again because we want to add even more glue to that. We glued the outside of the inside, and now we want to paint the inside of the inside, if that makes any sense. I mean, you can see what I'm doing. We want to glue on the other side of the string that we've already glued so it stays together really nicely. And be careful not to burn yourself, because I definitely did several times. So the reason we wanted it to hold so well is because we're actually going to be cutting through the glued section, so that way we have 2 strips of thatch out of that single big piece. And now you might want to actually get the glue gun again just to glue those ends. It's really important that that holds, okay? Because the next steps, which are the arduous bits, if you can believe it, is to untwist every single strand of jute twine, because they're all made out of 3 separate threads twisted together to make the twine, so you want to unravel those. So just stick Doctor Who on or something. It's going to take a long while, so get comfy. And of course, once they're all untwisted, you're not done yet. Now you need to brush out all of the separate strands that make every thread that make the twine. So there's simply no way you could have got the jute twine into these very, very tiny fibers without having them all anchored to something. So wrapping it around the like the spindle and then gluing all the inside, like, it gives a very short distance for that twine, you know, for the fibers to hold as one piece. If you try to make all the fibers and then put them together into, you know, any shape at all, impossible. No chance in hell you're going to manage to do that. So this works rather well. And the process of brushing out those fibers leaves you with piles of fibers you can then use to fill up gaps and things as well. It's great. It gives you like an extra building material to use, or to make like haystacks and stuff too. So it's you know, it's a fun process. And now you can see our fresh thatched roof on top of a hut next to another hut that has a roof that doesn't look very fresh. And we want our roofs to not look very fresh because these are naughty old goblin huts. And so we're going to have to ruin all of our hard work. And so I'm using the same material I use for priming everything else, but I have to water it down a lot more. So it's gesso and PVA glue, but I wanted to saturate through as much of the thatch as possible, which is actually easier said than done because it turns out thatch is incredibly waterproof even when it's made to this scale. It is incredibly difficult to get everything to soak through. So it really is a testament to these like old building materials. Thatch is really, really clever, and this is a great example of it. When you actually use it, you'll realize how hard it is to get get that wet mixture to permeate through all the layers. But luckily, it's going to dry absolutely solid, so you don't actually need to permeate everything. It's going to give it a nice tough shell regardless. So I need another excuse to be on camera wearing one of these t-shirts again. So I'm going to teach you something in a second, but this guy, he's an astronaut, but also a samurai. That's crazy! Anyway, thatch. Two different kinds of thatch. These are actually made out of the same materials, right? This is the same process that I used on both of them, basically. But they look very, very different. This is the Orky thatch that we're making in today's episode, and this is another one that might be made in a different episode, but I'm going to let you in on the secret already. Now, today, I was more careful priming this one. That's basically it. I did also put these sticks in place first, and while I was gluing them, I had them pinned with a clothes peg so I could really compress that area and make sure that all the thatch was held in place so the fibers would stay in line, so it would look neater. You know, I wanted this to look old and weathered, but also like it was nice once. This was never nice, right? You can tell this was never a nicely thatched roof. But they're both thatch, both the same materials, and the care you put into it correlates to the care of the builders that you're trying to emulate, basically. So you can get very different kinds of results using the exact same base material. So anyway, this guy has to go to space now. So they're getting there, but they need to look like this. So similar to how we did the walls, we're just going to keep over brushing and dry brushing and just adding more tones on top. It's pretty straightforward. It's just, pale colours, some browns, some yellows, just keep going over it. Basically, we made this job really easy for ourselves by making sure that the build was really, really good, right? It's that simple. All the texture is going to basically make the paint job easy. So now that most of it is painted, we're going to add the more delicate parts that I probably would have just knocked off with my brush from the rigorous, dry brushing and over brushing that we applied. So I left this until afterwards. So we're just basically making a little nest out of the, the leftovers basically from the brushing stage of the thatch. So it's the same material, and you can just push it into shape and add the little sticks jutting out of it that imply that there's some structure underneath the thatch holding it all together. The boss hut, I do want to be a little bit more elaborate on the top. I want to add some extra little greeblies. So while I'm at it, I'm also going to fish out all the greeblies I need for the fronts of our doors, because I want them to be all fancy like they are in the original cardboard designs. So once I've chosen all of the plastic pieces that I'm going to use, I need to then make the doors to attach them to. So these are coffee stirrers with matchsticks across. Really, really simple, but gluing that first matchstick down is the most awkward bit, which is why I only do that once, by gluing all the matchsticks to the coffee stirrers and then cutting the coffee stirrers into the correct heights for the doors. You'll notice they're not uniform heights, because frankly I don't want any of this build to be uniform. It's all goblin architecture. And this is going to be further communicated by deepening the wood grain with the back of a craft knife, and then using the front of it, the sharp bit, the blade, to take entire chunks out of the edges of the wood to really make them look battered, almost like driftwood or something. Most of that detail will go unnoticed if not for the magic of dry brushing. Again, really easy paint job, just lots of browns on top of the black primer as usual, and that'll pick up all the details, all the edges, all those little, nooks and crannies that I've created with the craft knife. I'm not going to fully belabor the exercise of building all the, the greeblies onto the doors because you might not have the pieces. So, if you've got some random plastic greeblies, then use super glue. That's my one bit of advice. Use super glue. You can even do what I do and put some of it on a palette, so you can just dip smaller pieces into the super glue, and that will bond plastic and wood. For the various furs and hides and stretched out skin and whatever else that make the backdrop for some of the greeblies that are on the doors, I'm using green stuff. This stuff will stretch fairly well, so it'll look like stretched out skin nicely. It will adhere to basically anything that it cures on. So it will stick to the wood, it will stick to the plastic, so you can use it as an adhesive between the two really nicely. And yeah, it takes texture really well. Also, dry green stuff doesn't stick to wet green stuff, unless the green stuff is being especially sticky, which can happen if it's like too hot or whatever, so just leave it for a bit, it'll cure a little bit, get firmer, and it'll be easy to use. So you can actually use it as a texture roller material really, really well to use on itself, which is what I did here. I took a fur cloak from a set of Romans, Victrix Romans I think it was, and I used that to make a texture roller. I just rolled the handle of a paintbrush covered in green stuff over the cloak, and it embeds that texture into the paintbrush, well, into the green stuff on the paintbrush, and then you can use that to roll over green stuff to put the texture back into something that you're sculpting. So real simple and really good results. And so I continue the rest of the sculpting. I have a variety of tools, but a cocktail stick actually worked really, really well for this. For most details you need, that'll do great. If it does stick, you can use a little bit of Vaseline either on the stick, or you can massage Vaseline into the green stuff before you work with it to make it, a little softer and easier to work with. I then paint all the remaining unpainted parts, just like I would paint any Warhammer or anything, with my, modelling paint. Although I do use a bit of painters, artists, acrylic paint, which generally doesn't work very well on plastic. It's not really designed for that, even though modelling paint is acrylic as well. It's all acrylic, but some of it is just much better for models, and that stuff is the stuff that is sold for models. But if you mix some of the artists acrylic with Citadel paint, it'll cover really well. Now the final step is to flock all of the models. So I've already super glued a bunch of tufts to the base. Tufts have adhesive on them usually, but I find it's not always strong enough. I tend to just do a dab of super glue to the bottom of every tuft anyway. But everything else, PVA is just fine. So put PVA over the bits that you want the flock to cover, and then just douse the whole thing in flock. Just throw all the flock, whatever flock you want to use. I use a big jumble of different kinds of flocks and, leaf litter and all sorts. And I think that's the most natural if it's pre-mixed, because, you're going to get a jumble of different grasses and things growing. Don't brush any of the flock off until the PVA has completely cured, okay? Just leave it for a few hours, go watch some telly or something, go do whatever else. Just let it dry, and then you can just basically shake all of the flock off of it back into your container. You can use it for another project. Only the stuff that is stuck in the glue is going to be stuck in the glue at the end of the day, so be generous. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It's a new channel. Go on, do it. I know you want to. Attaboy! And for 10% off clothes from Into the AM, use the link in the doobly-doo and code SQUIG at checkout. And a huge thank you to the most patient people in the world, my patrons, in no particular order and also alphabetical by complete happenstance: Comrade Sanders, Death Coder, Derek Edge, and Neon Nikki. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching. Take care.